Hi there guys, my name's Jonathan Dean, and in this course we're looking at how to create your very first video ad for use on places like YouTube and Facebook. Now, I've been a video editor for a number of years now, and I've got the privilege of working with Dan Holloway, editing some of his ads on a part-time basis. So I'm going to be using some of Dan's raw footage to show you and talk you through the key stages of how to edit a video ad. Now, in this course, I'm going to be using Final Cut Pro to show you all the steps from importing footage all the way through to uploading your footage to YouTube and even creating a video thumbnail for your ad. I'm going to be using Final Cut Pro for this tutorial on an Apple MacBook Pro computer, but there's a variety of different platforms out there that come at different costs to meet your needs. Other examples include Filmora, Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe Premiere Elements, and also something called DaVinci Resolve, which is completely free to download and use. So well worth checking that out if you're just starting out. But anyway, as I say, I'm going to be using Final Cut Pro today, but some of these principles that I'm sharing with you will be applicable to whatever software you choose to use. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Let's dive in. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to set up Final Cut Pro, and I'm going to be showing you a tip in terms of speeding up your workflow so that you can dive into video editing straight away with a pre-populated template project ready to go. Okay guys, let's dive in. So, first of all, we need to open up Final Cut Pro. Okay, and what we're going to be doing is going to File, New, Library. And I like to use an external hard drive, which I've appropriately called Dan Holloway, and set up, what we're going to do is set up a test folder for the purposes of this library setup. Okay, so you see the library's loaded, and that's basically the starting block in terms of setting up Final Cut Pro. Now, what I'm going to show you is something that's been quite useful for me. I've basically set up a template project that I go to straight away when Dan sends me a new advert to edit. So let's look into that. So if we come out of Final Cut Pro completely by hitting Command Q, and then I've actually got my own Dropbox folder here, and a folder down here with a template folder structure that I use for all the projects that I create going forward for Scrap the 9 to 5. So what I'm going to do is copy this template project folder, go to Dan Holloway, the external hard drive that I've got, and then Command V on the Mac to paste the project over, or to paste the template folder over. Okay, so that's done. So I'm going to call this now Demo Ad, and I'm also going to call this Demo Ad. And basically the way this is set up, I've got an ins folder for any footage that Dan will send me. I'll put it there initially. I've got an outs folder for anything I produce, any exports that I generate will go in that folder. I've also got a scripts folder just in case Dan sends me a script over that I need to reference, and I've even got a template script format there as well. And also I've got a thumbs folder for any thumb artwork with a pre-filled thumbnail piece of artwork that I've done with an old video that I've done that sort of is in the right format and things like that. So got that folder structure set up, ready to go to really smooth out the workflow in terms of creating an ad. But anyway, so what we're going to do is open this library up. Now we've set that up, and it's opening up Final Cut Pro down there, you'll see. And this is what it looks like. So I've set up several different events, these are called, so these folders are called events. And it just means, again, I can put all my original content, all the raw content that Dan sends me, I'll put in the original folder, in the orgs folder I call it. I'll put all my music and sound effects into the music and sound effects folder. I'll put end screen content, or I've actually pre-imported end screen content into the template folder, and also I'll import stock footage and other sort of ad overlays and tools that are useful in the ad creation process. So that's how I sort of set up my folder. But again, if you're starting from scratch, the way you would create an event is you hold down the Alt key and press N, and it comes up with this box, and you would call it test event, or you call it whatever you want to call it, so perhaps originals or exports or anything like that. So test event, press OK, and that's the library set up. So what we can do now is import footage and do what we need to, but I'll cover that in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Now, you may have opened up your video editing piece of software and looking at it blankly, not knowing what all the windows mean, not knowing where to start. So in this video, I just wanted to give you a quick rundown as to what all the windows mean in your video editing software, and how to start using them, basically. Now, I'm going to be using Final Cut Pro again, but most of what I'm going to say will carry over to the majority of video editing packages. So let's dive in. Okay, first of all, on this side, you've got your file explorer, or file sort of structure, really. So this is where you can import footage into. We've obviously created events or folders, basically, that we can drag things into here. And then in this preview window here, we're seeing obviously what's in the file structure. So we can click on things. So if I click on this one here, I've preloaded Dan's famous bar ad into this, and basically most video editing software packages will allow you to preview the video in this screen on the left, and then your main video will appear here. Now, Final Cut Pro works slightly different, I would say, from most packages. Usually you would have a larger screen on this side, but Final Cut Pro has made it fairly small and discreet, and allowing you to preview your footage in the main viewer. Some packages will have a main viewer which won't allow you to preview initially, but basically, whatever software you're using, you're going to be able to see what you've clicked on, basically. So that's the principle there. Now, in Final Cut Pro, we've got what's called sort of an effects inspector, which will allow us eventually, once we've created and set up our project properly, it will allow us to edit various parameters of the video. So video parameters, sound parameters, and eventually color will appear in there as well. And then this portion here is obviously the timeline, or the project in Final Cut is called. So what we can do in the next video is set up our project and begin importing our footage into it. Okay, guys, I'll see you in the next one. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to create a project in Final Cut, and also how to import footage from our camera or our phone. Okay, so first of all, I've got an event called projects ready to go. I've actually set up a project already in here, but for the purposes of this, we'll just delete that, so it's all from fresh. So you'll obviously have an empty space there, and the way to create a project in Final Cut is to hit the Command and N button, and we're going to call this demo ad project. And these settings are very important. Now, what you need to do really is make sure that the project matches your camera's settings. So if you're filming in HD, you want to use 1920 by 1080, and you can obviously set that here as well. Obviously, if you're filming in 4K, you would want to click 4K. Now, 4K files will be very, very large indeed, and I would recommend if you're starting out, and especially if you don't have loads of hard drive space or a good computer, make sure that you're filming in HD and also editing in HD too. So it's important to have the HD option selected there. It's important to have 1920 by 1080p selected there. There is 720p as well, and this is 2K, I believe, size, but generally speaking, stick with 1920 by 1080 and make sure your camera's set up to do that too. Now, your frame rate will differ depending on what country you're in. By standard, the UK frame rate is 25p, and your camera tends to be set to that by default. However, in today's world, 30p is acceptable to use. 30p tends to be for the purposes of America and places like that. So typically these days I set it to 29.97, which is actually basically 30p, but it's better to have it on 29.97. I won't go into the details of why. Okay guys, so we've set up our project and it's all ready to go. So we're going to click OK and it's going to load the project. Now what we need to do is import our footage from our hard drive or from our phone into the project. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm not going to show you the ins and outs of importing footage from your phone or from a camera because there's various ways of doing that depending on the phone you've got and depending on the computer you've got, etc, etc. But I will show you how to import footage into your video editing software. So the way to do that in Final Cut is use this arrow button up here. And then what we're going to do is, first of all, make sure a few settings are active. So what we want to do is copy the footage into our library from whatever source it's coming from. So if we're importing from an SD card or from our camera, we want to definitely make sure that we're copying to the library in Final Cut Pro to make sure that everything's going to be stored in the same place. So if we come back to it in a few years' time, we're not going to have missing files that are stored elsewhere. So definitely make sure you're importing it into the actual library itself. And what I'm going to do is navigate to some footage. So I'm going to go to the video editing course file that's set up, raw files to use. And then what Dan usually does when he sends us an advert to edit, he sends us a video file which is shot on his Canon M50 camera, and he also sends us a separate audio file which he records on his mobile phone using the Rode Smart Lav Plus, I believe, which records straight to his phone. So he's got a nice clean audio signal here, and he's also got his footage there. Now the built-in camera audio for most cameras isn't that great, hence why it's a good idea to have a separate audio feed, or you can actually plug in a mic into some cameras, but in this setup Dan has his audio separate from his video file. So we're going to select the video file and then we're going to select the audio file. We're making sure we're copying to the library. Now we're adding into the project file at the moment. We're going to click import selected, and you'll see that our video footage is there. Now what this is doing up here in Final Cut, it's currently importing our media into the library, and basically it's putting it off of the hard drive that we're using and adding it to the library. So as I say, if you copied the entire library onto another hard drive later down the line, it means that all your files are stored in one place and you're not going to have any missing files that are still stored on the old hard drive. So yeah, basically it's importing your footage. So let's wait for that. Good, that's all done. So I'm going to come out of there. And just to sort of solidify what I mean in terms of importing into your library, I'm going to select the video file that Dan's created, and then I'm going to hold down Command, Shift and R on the file, and it will bring up the video file and the audio there, and it's showing us that basically the footage is now imported within the library container, the Final Cut library container. So you'll see also that it's also in the original, where I originally imported it from is just there. So you'll see it's also still there, but it's also copied it into the folder as well. So definitely worth bearing that in mind, because as I say, it's a lifesaver if you start moving media around. Okay, so that's the end of this video. We're going to look at now starting to create your ad in the next video. So look forward to seeing you there. Bye for now. So we've imported our footage, we've prepped our project. All we need to do now is start the editing work. So let's take a look at the computer and dive into what comes next. So usually what I would do is select the video file that I've imported. I would drag it into the timeline, and you can hear here that there's a there's obviously a recording of the audio associated with the video, which has come straight out of the camera. But as I say, most cameras' internal mics aren't very good quality, and usually it's best if you can to record the audio externally to an external recorder, or indeed plug a tie mic or something like that into your camera's input connection in order to make sure that the quality's at its best. So that's what Dan's doing here. Dan's using a Canon M50, and he's also using a Rode Smart Lav Plus, I believe it's called, which is plugged directly into his phone, which is recording a separate audio source to a much higher quality than the internal mic in his camera. Okay, so we've got the footage there. We've also got the audio footage, audio recording here, that's separate. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to delete this from the timeline, and I'm going to select the audio recording, and I'm going to select the video recording too, and then I'm going to do something which is very useful. I'm going to right click and click synchronize clips, and basically I'm going to go OK to that. And what this has done now is Final Cut Pro has very cleverly synchronized the audio recording, which is completely separate from the video, and joined the two together for us, so I don't have the hassle of doing that myself. So let's drag that in and see what it looks like. Okay, so let's play it back and see whether it's done a good job.
Escape your 9-to-5 corporate career.
So yeah, it's done a good job. So I'm going to click into this file, and we can see here what it's done for us automatically. It's now yeah, basically it's got the video footage there with the built-in camera audio, and it's also got Dan's separate audio recording that he'd done on his phone, all lined up, ready for us to use. So that's ideal. So what I tend to do now is I tend to like to just copy that out of the synchronized clip, and then delete that and paste it back in. We can basically work with both types of media now. So what I like to do is lower the volume of the camera audio by using this line here, so that you sort of click and drag it and it goes up and down. So I like to completely get rid of that. And then basically we just do a quick test just to see whether the everything seems okay and the audio syncs to his mouth.
And you'll also know your exact next steps if this is the right path for you.
Good. So Final Cut Pro has done a great job in editing together the separate audio file and the video, and it's now set up the both of those pieces of footage ready for us to use. Okay guys, so what I'm going to quickly show you now is how to manually sync video and audio together, just in case it's needed. So I'm going to drag in the video clip, and then I'm going to drag in the audio clip as well. And you can see straight away that the waveform of the audio from the camera and also the dedicated audio on Dan's phone is very similar. So what we can do initially is just simply align it to basically match each other so they run in parallel, and then we can hold down Command and plus on our keyboard and really start to sort of align it properly, and that looks probably about right, so I'm going to test that.
Corporate career by replacing your salary with a passive income.
Okay, so that's nearly there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to click full stop, which will nudge the audio track very slightly forward. So you can probably see that just about is moving the audio forward. So let's reverse it using that as well, so it's all lined up. So let's go with this waveform because it's sort of quite clear as to where it starts. So I'm going to nudge this track one more step to the right.
And you'll also know your exact next steps if this is the right path for you. Page, and I'll then send you systems, tools, education, training, and
it probably could be slightly better, so I'm going to move it back using the comma button on my keyboard. So that's completely out now, so bear with me. I'm just going to get that lined up.
Then go ahead and skip button, because I don't want to waste your time. And if you're looking for a solution that's more get rich quick, then I'm afraid I can't help you. But if you realise that creating real change in your life will require a bit of hard work.
Okay, I think that's basically synchronized. So that's basically a quick tutorial as to how to do manual synchronization of the audio and the video in Final Cut. And as I say, most video editor software packages will obviously allow you to do that as well. So hopefully that's been helpful. Let's carry on. Okay, so we've imported our footage, we synchronized our media, everything's lined up and ready to go. Now what I like to do is to apply a basic color grade to the footage to really enhance the detail and to take away some of that sort of washed out look, because when you're working with raw footage, a lot of the time it will be fairly washed out, and those colors can be really enhanced in whatever video editing software package you're using. So we're going to take a look at that now. So if we look at Dan's footage here, we've got this triangle here is basically our color board, so I'm going to click on that. And what I like to do is do a few things. I tend to like to lower the exposure depending on how dark the footage is, just slightly, to really sort of bring out some of those blacks. And then I like to crank up the saturation a little bit more. Now you don't want to do it too much because otherwise he looks like he's just come back from a tropical holiday, a really bad tropical holiday, possibly with nuclear radioactivity involved. But instead what we want to do is bring it down and just make him sort of a normal colour, and really sort of gauge, really just to sort of make it pop a little bit more. Now you can play it along with the exposure a little bit more as well. If you wanted the contrast up a bit, that sort of makes his face brighter. That's a nice way to go. Basically you can just have a play with these settings really and make it look normal as possible really, because you don't want him looking either oversaturated or undersaturated. So if we take off these settings, you can see how grey he looks in comparison. Before you might think, oh, it's not too bad, but when you really sort of start to tell the difference there, you can see what a difference just applying a little bit of color grading makes. Now there are different ways of applying color grading. There's you can apply what's called LUTs to your footage as well. There's, let me just try and find that. If I type in LUT. Okay, so I found what's called a custom LUT effect that's built into Final Cut. you can drag that on, and then what you can do here is you can basically, there's a lot of creators out there who create what's called LUTs, which stands for lookup table, and it's a preset stylized look to images. So I've installed a few LUTs into my computer. So Peter McKinnon is an amazing chap who creates some incredible footage, and he's got his own sort of LUT pack here. So what I can do is load one of his LUTs in there. And you can see how the LUT has made Dan's face, because it's called Arctic Circle, it's made the whole image look very blue and cold, really. So that's one style. I can also load other LUTs as well. So that's more of a yellow sort of LUT. And we've got sort of more of a teal look there. Personally, I don't tend to use LUTs very much. I tend to go by the colour board and just sort of, you know, play with the image until I'm happy with the way it looks, really. But yeah, certainly worth looking into LUTs if you find that might be helpful. There's ways of installing LUTs into every piece of video editing software, which I won't go into at the moment, but that's the principle there if you want to look into that. But as I say, I tend to just work with the colour board. So I'm just going to, for the purposes of this, delete that. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to stick with for now. I'm fairly happy with that. It looks like a fairly normal image, not too oversaturated, not too underexposed. It's not too dark. It's the right sort of brightness, I guess. And his face looks normal to me. So happy with that colour grade. And it's a good idea to work on the colour grade of your footage prior to working on the edit itself, because later down the line what you'll find is you'll have probably 20 or 30 cuts here, which will then mean that you have to go through each of the cuts and apply the same effect if you hadn't done it in the first place. So definitely worth, before you do anything else, apply the colour grade to your footage. Also, what I like to do is increase the volume of audio. Now, in most video editing software packages, you'll probably be able to see this bar along here, and you see how the decibel sort of sign comes up. So what we can do, as if we were doing a quick edit, we can simply just raise this bar up. And what we don't want to do, if I zoom in, what we don't want is this peaking. So you can see how it's yellow and red. If you look very carefully, you'll see how it's all yellow and red. That means it's going to distort and it's going to sound rubbish. So if we play it,
this video, you'll understand what passive income. Then by the end of this video,
it doesn't sound too bad, but trust me, it's breaking up the audio footage and lowering the quality. So I tend to avoid using this bar, generally speaking, if I'm doing sort of a proper job. If I want to do something quick, I might just lift up the volume quickly. But if I want to do a really good job, I don't use that bar. So I've just undone that using Command Z. And what I like to use is an effect called the limiter. So what we need to do is go to the effects panel here by clicking this effects button. And then we need to make sure we're on all video and audio. And then we're going to type in limiter into this. And then we're going to drag it onto the audio recording, the separate audio recording from Dan's phone. And what that's done is it's applied the limiter effect to that audio recording. And what I can do here is open up this little button, which is sort of like a symbol with some sliders on it. And if I crank this up now, it's going to, you can see how it's boosting the audio. But what this should do is not crush the audio as much as the other way that I've just shown you. Is going to do it in a lot better way. It's going to make sure that the quality remains the same. Obviously, we don't want it, if we racked it up with, you know, a ridiculous amount, it's not going to be great. But it probably won't crush it as badly as the other method I showed you a second ago. So I'm going to put it about 10.5. Yeah, some yellow there is fine, but what you don't want is a lot of red and it to be too flat along the top. You want to be able to see the waveform. So I'm going to leave it at 10.5 and that now has nicely boosted the audio level without impairing the quality of it. So let's have a quick play.
Online business is the most predictable way to do this.
Good, so that's the conclusion of this part of the video. So obviously what we've done is we've imported our footage, we've synchronized our media so far, we've set up our project, we've color graded our footage, and we've boosted the audio levels of our audio recording. In the next video, we're going to be diving into the nitty-gritty in terms of video editing. So I'll see you there. Bye for now. In this video, we're going to be getting our hands dirty and we're going to be digging into the nitty-gritty of what it means to edit our footage. Okay, let's dive in. So, obviously what we've done so far is we've imported the footage, we've done a basic color grade of the footage, we've corrected the audio of the footage, and we're basically set up and ready to go for the most part. So what we need to do now is begin cutting down the excess waste, basically the bits that we don't need in our project. We're going to cut those things away. So let's begin listening and seeing what Dan's saying, basically. So here we go.
Right.
So Dan's getting himself in the zone there. So we can look at the waveform and we can see that he's probably going to start around there.
If you want to escape your 9-to-5 corporate career,
now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that. So the way I did that on Final Cut was hold down Shift, Command and B. And that's quite a useful key command in Final Cut. Basically what you're doing is blading, using the blade tool to cut everything in your project down the center. So we're going to do that. We're going to select that. Now if I just wanted to select and cut only the video element and not the audio, I can hit B on my keyboard and it changes it to this razor tool or blade tool, and then I can hit that and it just does that bit. Or alternatively, I can hit Command and B, I believe, select where I want to blade, hit Command and B, and it only does the video track. But as I say, for this, in this instance, we wanted to cut all the way through, so we've done that. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to turn the blade tool back to the normal mouse. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to delete the excess waste footage. Going to hit play.
if you want to escape your 9-to-5 corporate career by...
Good, so that's that. Now you can see later down the line here that Dan's obviously up and about. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do a full edit, otherwise we could be here a little while. But I just want to show you really the key elements in the video editing process. So the key element here really is to use the cut or blade tool to get rid of the bits of the video that you don't want. So we've basically found our starting place there. And obviously, you know, if what you want to do and what you desperately need to do really is to watch the video through from start to finish. What you don't want to do is just try and sort of guess where the gaps are. So obviously we can see there's a bit of a gap here, a bit of a pause. So if we wanted to get rid of that, we could again hit Command and Shift and B to slice or blade the entire footage down. And nice little smile from Dan there. And then we can hit Command, Shift and B to do that again. And then we can hit delete on our keyboard, and in Final Cut it has something called the magnetic timeline. So you'll see there, as soon as I deleted this element, it instantly brought the rest of it up next to this part of the video, which is a great feature of Final Cut. You won't typically find that in most video editing platforms. It can be really helpful, but it can actually be a bit of a pain as well. You'll find in some situations it becomes more of an annoyance than a help. There are ways around that, but you have to learn those over time. But anyway, great feature of Final Cut for the most part is that it will bring up any later footage next to the earlier portion of the video when you make an edit. So anyway, we've basically made a little edit there. But as I say, what you want to do is you want to go through it all, really tidy it up and go from there. So I think what we're going to do is we will delete that bit and we'll call that our finished video edit, I guess, of the advert. Actually, what I'll do is I'll probably just edit the end off as well to make that all in sync.
Shops right away. I'll see you on my website in just a second.
Okay, good. So we're going to just cut again using Command Shift B. We're going to select and we're going to hit backspace on the Mac to delete the excess footage. So we call that our finished product. Now what I want to show you is actually the completed version of this, a bit like Blue Peter. I've prepared one earlier, so if we skip over to that, I've opened it up ready to go. And you might think this is looks a bit intimidating. It, you know, potentially could be, but in actual fact all we've done here is open up cut up the footage. We've got rid of all the excess waste, and if we zoom in, you can see that we've applied a transition effect onto the timeline. So that's what I want to show you next, is apply that transition effect. So if we hop back over to our demo ad, and say we've made an edit here, so in fact there is a gap here. So if we zoom in and we basically chop that out, and then we will play that back.
Unless, so what I said at the start of this.
So this isn't going to be a perfect sort of example, but what you want to do really is to make it sound as much as possible that there hasn't been any interruptions in the actual video itself. Now, because there's only one camera being used here, we are going to have some obvious cuts come up, but there's ways of basically cleaning those cuts up. So if we find the gap there and we just try and get rid of some of that excess silence a bit more, so we'll cut that down. Let's listen back to it.
Income, unless way to replace your salary with a passive income, unless. So what I said at the start of this video isn't.
Okay, not a perfect example to be honest, but for the purposes of this, we'll leave that as an okay edit. Normally speaking, you want to make sure it all blends in as much as possible. But now if we want to apply a transition effect to this video clip, what we need to do is use this button here, which is the transition browser. Now, when you're starting out video editing, it can be very, very tempting, and I did this myself in the early days, to really apply and play with as many transitions as possible. So, for instance, you might be tempted to use this transition, which looks, you know, when you're starting out, it looks quite exciting and fun, but in actual fact, it can be quite distracting, particularly if you've got a serious message being conveyed like this. So basically, my advice is typically to only use the cross dissolve transition effect. And what this will do is cleanly merge the two video clips together. So let's take a look at this now.
Way to replace your salary with a passive income, unless. So what I said at the start of this video.
And you can see how that sort of smoothly blends in the two clips together, and it's not sort of glaring, it's not sort of distracting us from the overall message. Basically, you will cheapen the look of your video if you start to play around with some funky transition effects. So best to keep your transitions as smooth as possible, even though Final Cut likes to tempt us with all these fun transitions. They are basically a bit dangerous to use because they will cheapen the look of the video. Okay, so we've made our cut there now. So if we hop back over to the finished article, we'll look at the video, and what you'll see here is we've got a load of titles. Now, I won't be going into how to add subtitles in this course because it's intended to initially kickstart you, and it can be a bit of a complicated process. But what I will say is there's some very good subtitle tools on the internet which you can look into. Dan likes to use rev.com, which is an excellent service. basically you can upload your video, you can then burn subtitles into your video content, and then you can download the video and begin rolling it out. But what we've got here is basically what we've done is we've uploaded the video to rev.com, we've asked it to create subtitles for us, and then we've downloaded what's called an SRT file and converted it into subtitles. Now the reason, you might be thinking, why do we make it so hard for ourselves? Well, the reason is because we want to make sure the subtitles are on brand, basically, that they're using the font we want them to use, and we want to stylize that in our own particular way. So that's why we basically download an SRT file, so we can stylize it and make it on brand. But I won't go into the nitty-gritty of how to do that. But I would say in this day and age, if you're doing an advert, definitely look into getting subtitles done, because it will assist you with your marketing, especially if you're on places like Facebook where there's autoplay going on. So when people are scrolling through, they can start reading, particularly if they're in a busy room or something, they can start reading what's being said, which might lure them into clicking onto the ad. So definitely worth looking into. But for the purposes of this, I won't to teach you how to do that necessarily. But what I will say is Dan's got this very clever tool here that tells him exactly where the subtitles should go in relation to all the buttons that appear on YouTube, whether that's on the mobile or desktop version of YouTube. It's basically telling us exactly where we need to place the subtitles so they don't go underneath these elements here. The overlay is available on the Scrap the 9 to 5 community on Facebook. If you pop a search into the Facebook search bar for the YouTube overlay, that should come up. Okay, so let's hop back over. Oh, actually, what I will do is show you the other part of the ad. Now, what we tend to do as well, which is useful when you're doing your adverts, is when you're sort of saying, please click here, or you know, you're trying to get people to click on the button to take them to your landing page. What Dan has come up is sort of an arrow. So if we play this for a second.
The blue get access button down there for desktop, down below on mobile. Enter your details. Okay,
so we call that a CTA, basically a call to action, which is well worth doing. So that does include a few things. So you can see the arrows bouncing up and down there. Basically you have to get used to sort of what's called keyframing in order to do something like that. But definitely I would say have a click here with an arrow pointing down. It doesn't necessarily need to bounce up and down when you're just starting out learning how to video edit, but well worth having something like that. Also, the other part of what Dan has is a sort of a CTA at the end here. So if we hit play, and you can see what's happening there is we've obviously got an arrow, we've got some text saying click the blue get access button to encourage people to click, and then we've also got, if you can see it, a little countdown timer, which again just encourages people that this ad will disappear soon. Get a move on basically and click the button. So well worth thinking about something like that, I would say, in your call to action at the end, just to give people that extra encouragement to really click the button, and to encourage them to there's some urgency attached to it as well. Let me just bounce back over. Okay, so this is our ad so far. And what I will show you actually, well, let's try and recreate it, shall we? So as much as possible. So if I go to, well, first of all, what we see is we need a black screen here, really. We need a black endpoint. So the way to do that is to go to this button here, which is titles and generators. And then we can go to solids, and then we can drag the custom solid on there. And you can see now that's given us a whole black screen, which is good, and we can even change the face of that as well. If you wanted to change the color of that, you would go on to click onto your inspector window, click on the left hand button there, and then you can select whatever CTA color you want. So I think we'll stick with black for the time being. And what I've done is, you remember I said that I pre-populate a template project file, or template library I should say, and I've got a sort of a pre-populated event folder in here. So let's click on this one, make sure I'm using the right one. And it just means that I can literally drag certain elements there. So let's click through, that's the click here button. We've got the countdown, so if we drag that on there, and let's see how that looks. Okay, so that's obviously a bit large, so we're going to click on that. We're going to adjust the scale down, so let's change the scale there. So again, we're in the Inspector window under the Video tab. We've adjusted that down, and then there's different ways of moving images and footage around. We can either use this here, which is very sort of you know, it's useful if you want to keep things in line, but if you want to sort of freely move footage and things, what you can do is click this transform button, and it highlights this, and you can literally just move things around. Now obviously in any video editor you'll be able to move things around the screen, but it will differ in the way that you do that. But for the most part you'll be able to do it on the right hand side, or you should be able to sort of freely move things as well. So we're going to unclick that now because we're happy with where that is. And then what we need to do is set up, let's create a title, shall we? So the way to create a title you can do it in a few ways. You can first of all hit Control T, and you can see that creates a basic title there. Or if you wanted to do it another way, you can click on this tab up here. You can then basically browse different titles. So there's templated titles there with different effects applied to them, and particularly this custom one is a plain effect really, so we can use that. So if we then go back over to our inspector once that's dragged in, and then we click on this sort of paragraph line box, and we change the text. So if we say please click here, you won't regret it. Obviously I wouldn't advise you use that copy. It's not the world's best copy, it's just intended to be an example basically. We align it up to the end because we want it going all the way through to the end, and then we want to bring the text up at probably give it a second or two to finish, and then go into the text. So we line it up there. We want the text to fade in, so in order to do that quickly you can hit Command T on in Final Cut, and it instantly creates the transition effect on both ends of the video, which is nice. So when we click play you can see it coming up there. Obviously we want this, we want to make sure this is branded in the font that we want to use. So obviously we can change fonts here to whatever we want. Let's do that. Obviously we won't want that. Now a useful feature of Final Cut, which not many people know about, is that you can pre-save styles of text and things like that. So what I've done here is I've got the scrap the 9 to 5 format preset basically. So if I click that now, it's coming up with all the stylized items for that text. Probably just make it a bit bigger actually. Don't want to make it too big because otherwise it looks a bit unprofessional. And there we go. So let's now add an arrow, shall we? So let's see if we've got an arrow in here. Yeah, which we do. So we're going to drag that across, and we're going to layer that on. And then obviously it's too big at the moment, so we're going to shrink it down. And then we will move that over. And we can leave it like that. But obviously if we play it back, you can see the title is obviously fading in, but the arrow is right there, which we don't want. So we can Command T quickly, or the long way for that is applying a transition. So if we go to dissolves and cross dissolve, I think I applied it to the wrong one. So, let's do that right. Okay, so if we drag the cross dissolve over, it then applies it to that portion. And also we've got it, I think it was already pre-applied to that, but yeah, we can drag it across and apply it there if need be. Okay, so now that's looking a bit better. Great, so we probably want to fade the clock in as well, so we'll fade that in using Command T for now. And what we want to do, I think, is let's basically, I'll just give you a quick tutorial on sort of making that arrow go up and down. This is important because basically what I'm about to show you can be applied to any sort of images or any video even that you bring up. So it's something called keyframing. So what we're going to do is we are going to hit this keyframe button here under position, and then what we're going to do is hit Control V, and that will open up a panel there, and then we're going to go up. So we go up, and then we're going to go forward a little bit more, and then we're going to bring the arrow down. And what you want to do, I'm not going to do it now, but you would repeat that process, you know, until the end of the arrow, making sure that you get the exact same parameters, and then basically you'll see the arrow go up and down. So for the purposes of this, if I just do it very roughly, it would go up again, go down again, and then I'll hit play. You can basically see that you've now animated your arrow, and that's all through the power of keyframes. So well worth knowing a thing or two about that. So I'm going to quickly just fade this now, so it's not going to come to an abrupt end.
See you on my website in just a second.
Okay, so that took a little bit of time to render, but you can see how it's slowly blending now, which looks a lot smoother, a lot more professional. So well worth doing that type of thing. Now there's a few other key commands really that are really useful. I'll just give you a few just in case you're going to use Final Cut. So first of all, L on the keyboard is great for playing really fast through your footage. So if we press it now, I pressed it twice. And then spacebar is the play button, which is useful. And then we've obviously got Command Z, which is a really, really important thing to use in terms of undo. Definitely be using that once or twice, if not 1,000 times, to be honest. And then we've got something called scrubbing, which is, is available in most video editors. So that's S on this on Final Cut, and it basically allows you to scrub through and view the video at top speed to find what you're looking for. So that's really useful. You've got something called markers as well. So if we liked this particular portion of the video, we can hit M and it creates a nice marker. We can either double click and bring up notes there, or we can basically double click and it bring up the note, and that's all using the button M. So well worth using that if you're using Final Cut as well, and you should be able to apply a marker to whatever footage that you are using. Also Command Shift and V is brilliant, so that will allow you to paste any video effects. Command C will allow you to copy the effect, and then Command V will allow you to paste the effect as well. So that's a really useful key command. Okay guys, thanks ever so much for watching this video. Hopefully it's been helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. So, where are we at? We've created a basic edit of our ad. We've added CTA at the end, call to action screen. We've obviously applied color grade. We've enhanced our audio. We've applied transition effects. what do we do next? So one thing I realised that I didn't mention last time is that you can, on occasion, find yourself needing to add certain video effects. Now, depending on the video editing software that you're using, there'll be different ways to apply those effects, but obviously I'll show you how to do that in Final Cut. So let's dive in. Okay, so one of the most common effects that we might want to apply is the blur effect. So if we use the blade tool, so Command Shift B to create a cut there, and we'll create another cut there in the same way. And say we're bringing up a title here, so if we hit Control T, we have brought up the basic title, which we can then edit to basically make it what we want. So if we add a basic bit of text, so this demo on how to add effects. Now obviously we can't read that. Dan's stylizing, on brand stylizing, allows for text to be a bit more visible. Dan tends to wear dark t-shirts, so the title pops quite well. Yeah, what we could do to really, if we wanted that centralized, for instance, and wanted to make it a larger title of sorts, we can apply a blur effect. So the way to do that is to go to the effects panel, which is just there. So we hit the effects button. We can then type in blur, and what we want to do actually is this confused me for a long time until Sarah from Scrap the 9 to 5 kindly showed me what my problem was. I was applying a 360 blur to a normal video, whereas I needed to apply a basic blur. So I think if we select basics, or if we go to blur is probably the easiest thing, and hit X on that, we've then got all our standard blur effects that aren't intended for a 360 camera. So if we apply the Gaussian blur, that's quite a nice blur usually. You can see it sort of applies a nice gentle blur, and then we can adjust the effects in the inspector window in Final Cut using this slider tool here. So that applies to whatever effect that you're applying. You can obviously adjust the effect parameters in the inspector window, it's called. So yeah, happy with that. That's a nice blur. Obviously other effects, take a look through and basically browse through whatever video editing tool you've got to take a look at the effects on offer basically. So there's a vibrancy effect, so we can apply vibrancy. If we want to get rid of the blur, we can just hit delete. And that didn't seem to do a massive amount, but if we crank it up, you can see how it's sort of changing the color there. Typically I wouldn't use something like that, but yeah, there's a host of different effects, shall we say, that are at your fingertips, which basically have a browse through and see which ones you like. Now, be very, very cautious with the effects you use, because basically most effects that you apply will cheapen the look of your video. So if we select this one, for instance, and do that, you might think, oh, that's a nice sort of effect, but in actual fact it's quite a sort of a cheapy look to it. Now, unless you were sort of doing quite a, you know, maybe a music video or a sort of a grungy type feel video, I would discourage you from using any sort of flamboyant effects, shall we say. Just stick to the basic effects, because they keep your video looking professional. So we're going to delete this effect from this media, and we're just going to basically leave it there. So if you do want to use effects, use them sparingly is my advice there. Okay, so in this part of the course, what we're going to do now is look at what else Dan does in his videos. So let's just hop over to a pre-done one. So now it's useful, it might be useful and interesting for you to know that every time that Dan, or most of the time that Dan creates an advert, what he will do is produce 2 versions of that advert as a sort of a standard. And we call one version a base version, which is basically a sort of a basic edit of the video with subtitles on, no music. We add the CTA arrows throughout the video and also at the CTA ending, the end screen at the end of the video. But that's about all that we would do. We would just produce a basic version of the edit. And then if we hop over again, I've already opened this one up. What we also do is produce a B-roll version, we call it, where we use exactly the same ad. So we basically duplicate the base version of the project. By the way, if you want to duplicate projects, the way to do that is to click on the project you want to duplicate, right click and click duplicate. And also you can back up your project manually using the snapshot project button as well. That's always useful. Yeah, if you want to duplicate, use that function there. So yeah, as I say, we duplicate the base version. We then look at the types of B-roll that can be applied. Now, we've got some SFM community sort of shots here. We've got Dan welcoming someone onto stage. We've got Dan, I think, working at a computer somewhere as well. Here we go. Basically, we supplement the ad with B-roll. Now, it's been interesting because in Dan's advertising, we've noticed, well, over time, Dan's noticed that on occasions, the base edit without any B-roll or music, which we also add, the base edit can actually outperform the B-roll edit, which is strange because you'd think the more work you put in, the more you get out of it. But in actual fact, a plain, simple advert can sometimes be better in terms of sales performance and conversion rates than a B-roll edit of exactly the same ad with nothing changed. So that's worth bearing in mind. So, but anyway, you might want to, in your own testing, produce a base edit of just the message and then produce an additional B-roll edit of your ad to test which one works better. So just wanted to throw that in there. So what we need to do now is I'm going to show you how to edit or add B-roll, and also I'm going to show you music, how to add music as well and how to play with that. So that's what we'll be looking at. So if we hop back over to our edit, now obviously in a base edit usually we would have subtitles in there, which I've mentioned in the previous video, and we would use this overlay to work out where the subtitles should sit. Also, by the way, a good feature is the V button on the keyboard. If you hit V, it turns anything off and on. So I'm going to turn that off because obviously we don't want that on the final image, on the final video. Okay, so now what we want to do is add B-roll. Now, preferably use your own B-roll that, you know, you might get a friend or a partner to film you doing certain things, perhaps around the house, you know, chopping up a carrot or boiling the kettle or typing on your keyboard or whatever. That's always good because what it does is it shows that you're a real person, that you're relatable, and it's not just some glossy person with some shiny white teeth doing all those things. It's you and you're a real living person. So that can be a really nice touch to use in your ad, is basically use footage of you doing certain things. Obviously, the certain things need to be whatever you're talking about in your video. So yeah, so that's something to bear in mind. But anyway, what we do is use a really great resource called storyblocks.co or .com, I believe it is. If we type in storyblocks into this.com, it will bring up Storyblocks. Now I believe I'm already logged in. It is a subscription service. I think you can pay monthly and you can pay annually, but in terms of stock footage, this is one of the best sources. Other stock footage resources, you'll be paying a lot of money, like £90 plus really for a single clip, whereas this you can pay small amounts on a monthly basis, or you can also basically have an annual plan as well. So really flexible tool and packed full of great resources. So if we just find someone making tea, let's type that in, making tea. Let's give it a second to load. Get rid of that for now. I can look through here, and there's a vast library. Now the other free tool, if I just take you there first of all, is go to something called pixabay.com, and there if we type in making tea into the same thing, this has got selected for images at the moment. So if we change that to video, you can see that there's not much there. This is completely free to use, most of this. I think this is probably the free bit. I think this is just an advert actually. So there's literally only 2 images to work with. But if you're just starting out, pixabay.com might be a good starting block for stock footage, but you might find yourself heavily restricted. So so just bear that in mind. So if I'm going to go back over to the resource, the story block resource. I'm going to select that one because that looks quite nice, and we're going to hit download. I usually select the MP4 version. You can do higher versions as well, but typically speaking I find the MP4 version seems to be very good quality. So we're going to download, and then on a Mac I'm going to click this arrow here, show in Finder, just so I've got it there. And then I'm going to jump back over to our project. So let me find that. So this is our project folder. What I would usually do is have a stock events folder ready to import any stock footage into, so I can quickly find it if I need to. So I'm going to drag that in, and then what that's actually done in a few seconds is imported the footage into our library again. So I went over this in an earlier video, but just to sort of earth what that means. So if I hit Command Shift and R, and what we can find here is it's now imported our stock footage deep within the library itself. So that is what you definitely want to do when you're importing footage, as I said in an earlier video, because it means that you can copy the entire library without losing any footage. If you don't have that set up to import into your library, you're going to find yourself having lost footage along the way. I can tell you that now because it's happened to me. So the way to do that in Final Cut is to make sure that this is selected, really, copy to library. So that's what you want to have selected every time you import footage. Okay, so we've now got our man making tea, so I'm going to bring that in and we're going to sort of plonk it there. Obviously you want to make sure the B-roll really reflects what's being said, and you want to create a story ultimately out of the B-roll, and really sort of let it enhance your edit. The good rule of thumb is if it doesn't add to your video, don't use it. That should be your rule of thumb when doing any video editing, really. If it's not really adding to the footage, ask yourself the question, should it be in the edit itself? So yeah, have that in the back of your mind. But say we want to go with this piece of footage, you might want to, again, like I showed you in the previous video, you might want to hit Command T to fade the footage in. Okay, so that's fading in the footage. Now what you can do is, say you wanted to zoom this in manually yourself, and you'll be able to do this in any video editing platform. You can select the start of the event or the clip, and then you can hit position, a keyframe. Using our keyframe function, you can hit, I always hit position as well as scale. And say you want to zoom in slightly, you can just you know, move your header, timeline header, to further in down the line basically, and then you can pull the scale bar up. So, and maybe you want to zoom in on the pot, so we pull that up, we move that across, and you see obviously that it's cutting it off there, which doesn't look great. So we're just going to zoom that in, and what that's going to do now is it's going to keyframe or slowly over time zoom into the teapot. So let's play that back.
Owners who've worked on their business for years haven't come close. It's the right kind of online business, one that balances.
Okay, so you can see that's slowly doing the zoom. It's not, you know, not perfect, and there's some edge showing there, so you obviously need to make sure you do that correctly, but you get the gist there, that you can really play with the image and make it work for what you need it to be. it's a good idea to sort of have close-up shots where you want the emotion of the clip to be really sort of impactful and carry some emotion. Close-up shots in both, you know, the talking head shot and B-roll is great for that. Whereas wider shots are great when you're having more of a light sort of tone to the message you're conveying in your video. So bear that in mind. If you want to really drive emotion, have close-up shots of stock footage and sort of close-up shots of your head if you're talking to camera, or if you want a lighter feel to it, then you can pull out a bit more. You obviously want a mixture of both. Don't make it so intense it's always close up. You want to sort of have a mixture of both to really convey that emotion across at the right time. Okay, right, so we've for the purposes of this, we've added our stock footage. We now want to pull some music into that. Now obviously you might want to do some tests in your advertising to see whether music is an effective tool to have in the background. You might actually find that no music is better than having music, so I'm not saying you've got to add music, but if you want to add music, we use a great resource that I highly recommend called audio.com. Now, by the way, we're not affiliated with audio.com in any way. It's just a sort of a useful tool, and we're not affiliated with Storyblocks either. But this is great. It's got a vast library of great music to have a look around on. So if we go to playlists, you can find there's different sort of feels, you know, depending on the motion you want to convey. So if we want to go to atmospheric to have a bit of a serious sort of somber sort of tone to our music, we can have a play round. So I'll play this. Okay, that might be a bit loud and leery for what we want. Okay, I think I'm going to go with that one. I think I roughly know what that sounds like. So for the sake of this anyway, I might, you know, to be honest, when I'm video editing, I might spend a fair, you know, good few minutes trying to find the best track for a video to convey an emotion ultimately in the video. So that's very important in marketing. Music really carries emotion with it. So if you want to drive a certain emotion home in a certain portion of the video, make sure that the music really makes you feel that way when you listen to it back. I guess ask yourself, what do you feel like when you listen to the music, and if you're feeling the way that you want your customer to feel, then use that music. Okay, so on audio.com, I've obviously got a subscription. They've got some really great offers, including a lifetime subscription. Other subscription services out there are typically will ask you for a monthly subscription, whereas the beauty of this one is you can pay a one-time fee and have access, you know, for your entire life to a great resource of music, and I think it's about $200 at the moment. So well worth looking into this platform, I would say, because you'd save yourself a lot of money, and there's some high quality, really good quality music on here as well. So definitely check this website out. Okay, so if we pick this one, I'm not 100% sure what it sounds like, but we're going to go with it. We're creating our license at the moment, so if I call it a business license, and we select internet, create license, download now. Okay, so that's downloading a high quality file of the recording. We then obviously need to import that into our library. So the way to do that is we go to the downloads folder where I've just downloaded it, and then I've already created a music and then sound effects event folder. So I'm going to just simply drag that in, and we just have a look for it there. So we've got that in, and then we will zoom out of our project and we just simply drag the music. Now you'll see that it's far too short in comparison to the length of this video. So the way I might get around that is try to cleverly edit the music together so it blends seamlessly into one another, and obviously that extends the length of the of the music, so it sort of covers more of the video. Obviously you don't want people to get bored of the music, so you might find yourself needing to use 2 or 3 tracks if you want to, so there's always that possibility. But make sure your transition is always nice. So I won't go into sort of the ins and outs of trying to make that nice at the moment, but obviously you want to make sure the transition, you know, the timing is right in terms of the rhythm of the music blending from the first portion of the music to the second. So definitely work on that, and that can take a bit of practice to get used to that. But anyway, we'll just go with 1 track for now. And obviously what we want to do is, first of all, if we play it back,
then go ahead and click the skip button, because I don't just change your life exactly like it has done.
Now, a common mistake, and I made this mistake starting in video editing as well, is that you might leave this track too loud. You really want to make sure that the vocal itself is better than the music, is louder than the music, because the last thing you want is for the music to be louder than Dan, because in doing so you might completely ruin your advert edit. So basically you want to bring down the level of the music right down to something that's a lot more manageable, so it sort of complements what's being said in the actual main video itself, rather than swamping the video with a distracting soundtrack. So let's play that back now.
For myself and for thousands of others in my online community. Now, I started building my first online business back in 2000.
Okay, that's a bit better. So obviously, you know, if we were doing this properly, we might want to play with it. So you can just use the level bar here to sort of bring it up and down to really sort of gauge what it should be like. And even if you wanted to, say you wanted to make a bit here louder, so let's just do that now. So what we need to do here is create what's called a keyframe, which I talked about in the last video. And a quick way to do that on the music track is use the Alt and K command, and that creates a keyframe wherever we've got our sort of header bar. So if we want another keyframe here, we can do that. So Alt and K, and then we do Alt and K there, and Alt and K there as well. That will allow us to raise the audio level of the soundtrack to fill any holes and to sort of bridge gaps, I guess. Now, you might not need to do that in your specific video edit, but I wanted to show you that you should be able to do that in any video editing software. It might obviously vary the way you do it, but that's obviously how you do it in Final Cut. So now if we listen back,
I've more than replaced my 6-figure.
okay, so you can see how it sort of gently fades in and it gently fades out. So that can be a useful feature, and it can really make your videos feel more professional, particularly if you're doing that with a title screen coming up or something like that. It can really make your video start to feel quite professional in the way you've edited it. So that's well worth knowing and bearing in mind as well. Okay, the last thing I want to say, guys, before I end this video is to make sure that you've really checked through your video edit to make sure that everything is quality, basically. You really want to, before you export a video, you really want to make sure that it is perfect by the time you hit export. So go through your video, watch it through, and then make sure you're happy with it, tidy up any mistakes, make sure it's watertight basically, and then we'll be ready to export. So we're going to cover exporting your video off in the next video, so I look forward to seeing you there. Bye for now. In this part of the course, we're going to be showing you how to export your video, your completed video file off, ready to upload to places like YouTube and Facebook. So let's dive in. Okay guys, so we've got our video file here. We're going to call that done. Obviously it's not done, it's very rough, but we're just sort of, for the sake of this video, we're pretending it's done, shall we say. So in order to export a video, what we need to do is, first of all, in Final Cut, anyway, we need to tell it where to export. So the way to do that is to go right to the start, make sure that you've got your playhead in the right place, and then in Final Cut the simple way to do that is hit the I button, and you see it sort of brings up this range selector tool. Now you can select various tools in this menu bar here, and one of which is the range selection tool, but quite simply the I key does that anyway. Okay, so we go to the end now and we want to do the same thing, so we'll zoom in, and this is obviously the end of our video. We can just hit the O button and that will extend the range to right to the end of the video. So obviously if we wanted the range to end there, we could do that. And it sort of, Final Cut's a bit weird like this really, but you just basically have to make sure that range is selected in order for your video to output correctly. Now I believe because this is the only video in the entire library, it will just export this video. But say you had other things here, then you didn't use the range tool, it would try and export everything. So this is where the range tool really allows you to control what you're going to export. So we're going to go to the end here. Okay, so we are ready to go. Now I will say, I just mentioned it in the last video actually, but I will say that what you need to do before you hit export is watch the entire thing through, really quality check it to make sure that that every mistake is covered up. I try to do that every video I watch where possible, to really make sure I haven't made a silly mistake or forgotten something, because you know it happens more often than not that you think you'll be done, but in actual fact there's some issue, maybe the level of the soundtrack is wrong or something like that. So definitely make sure that you've quality checked the video before you do anything else. But if you're confident you're ready to export, what you can do is go to this button up on the top right corner in Final Cut, which is the share button. And then you can go to, typically I would probably go to this one, and you can then hit settings, and this is the settings that I sort of like to use. What I will say is that the settings here need to match your original recording settings. So whatever settings you used on your camera, they should be mirrored in these export settings as well, and equally they should be mirrored in your project settings as well. So if we go to our project that we're working on at the moment, so this is the project we're currently in, and what we can do in Final Cut is look at the inspector window, and it's telling us what the size of the frame is. So that's telling me it's in HD, the project, and it's also telling me the frame rate is 29.97, and the reason why I've set this project up like that is to mirror the file settings of the video recording. So basically you want the file settings to be exactly the same for the actual recording, the project, and also now the export as well. So you want that consistency, otherwise you'll export your video and you'll start to see that it's sort of jerky in places. It might not be the way you want it to look like, so definitely bear that in mind. I won't go in depth as to the different frame rates to use in this video tutorial, but basically 29.97 is a good frame rate for the use on internet. There are other sort of frame rates out there that you can consider, but that's a good one to use initially. Okay, so we've set the video up. We've selected save only, which can be confusing when you're starting on Final Cut. I think it doesn't come up with that necessarily there. It might try and add it to QuickTime or to your iTunes or something like that, but you want to select action save only. We're selecting H.264 better quality, which is what's called the codec, which is basically the brand of file it's going to use is H.264, and that's a well-known file format that YouTube knows how to handle, etc, etc. So that's the Apple format, and that iPhones use and things like that. So well worth sticking to H.264, and also it's fairly compressed as well. It says 1.3 gig there, but that's obviously because it's a fairly long video. But if we were to do another codec, it would significantly increase the file size. So yeah, definitely worth using H.264. So then we're going to hit next. And then we're going to find where we want to export it to. Now this is the beauty of setting up a template project. It enables you to have a folder ready to go. So if you remember, I created, let me find the right folder, created this outs folder. So I like to just put anything in there. And typically what I like to do is call it F1 for the first export. And what F1 means to me is basically this is version 1 of the video, of the final video. So F stands for final. So it's version 1 of the final video. And then we click save. And then it's exporting here. So you can see it's sort of started the wheel spinning, so to speak. So if we click on that, it's now telling us it's sharing. And in order for this to, basically this will take a bit of time, depending on the age and speed of your computer and things. This could take a while. You can hear my fan whirring up as we speak. So I'm going to end the share there because we don't need to export this. And that is how you export. So in the next video, what we're going to be doing is showing you how to upload to YouTube. So I will talk you through that process, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now. Welcome back. We are now ready to upload our video, our finished ad, to YouTube. So this video is going to be teaching you how to do that, just in case you weren't aware. So let's dive into the computer. Okay guys, so we've got our finished ad here. This is actually one I prepared earlier. So if you want to escape your it's got the subtitles and everything in it in this instance. Yeah, for the sake of argument, this is our finished ad. We head over to Chrome. I've already brought it up here, but obviously what I've done is typed in youtube.com. I've made sure that I'm signed in under my my own business account in this instance. For the sake of argument, I'm going to be using my own business account, but obviously you want to use your own one, and you want to sign in to Google and YouTube as well, so you can switch accounts here and sign in. So basically make sure you just log yourself in, and once you're logged in, you click on this create button here, go to upload video. And then it's quite simply a case of just navigating to your video and dragging it into here. And this process might take quite a long time depending on the speed of your internet connection. I've got a fairly fast connection, so it's only going to take me 4 minutes to upload the entire advert. But on your connection, it might be slightly slower than that. Anyway, so we then obviously need to title the video. So if we call it, for the sake of argument, are you feeling trapped in your 9 to 5? And then you can add a description of whatever you want in there. And then you can see you can add a thumbnail. Now you might need to add your mobile number in order to verify that this account is yours before you can upload a thumbnail, which I've already obviously done that on my account. So if I did want to upload a thumbnail, I can do that here. Click upload. And what I'm actually doing in the final video is show you how to create a thumbnail, a video thumbnail, absolutely free of charge, using something called canva.com. So I'll show you that in the next video. And basically you want to make sure all your settings are right. You might want to create a playlist here. So I've got a few playlists on the go. So you could add it to a playlist. Now this is asking you whether the content itself is made for kids or not. This isn't made for kids. We'd only select yes if it's sort of targeting kids as an audience, really. And for the most part in your business, it's probably not likely to be targeting kids watching YouTube. So no, this isn't made for kids. Okay, and then Now what you want to do here is click more options. It's hidden away, but what you really want to do is begin to add tags to your video that relate to whatever the video is. And what this is doing is it's telling YouTube's algorithm what your video is about, really. So if people begin searching for certain terms, then over time your video will rank for these types of things. So we're telling YouTube here that this is to do with digital business, it's online business, it's digital lifestyle business, etc, etc. So we're using keywords similar to the keywords really that you would use in your advertising campaigns. You're using those as tags really to tell YouTube what the video is about. So that is incredibly important. I would definitely not ever upload a video without putting tags there. You want to make sure that's packed as full as possible, really, with as many tags about the specifics of what the video is about, so you've got a chance of being ranked on YouTube search engines. So that's well worth doing. Now your screen might look slightly different because I've got something called vidIQ installed as a free plugin, which tells me what what key is basically a helper for keyword research and things like that. So that's well worth looking into vidIQ. I won't go into what it's about here, but in effect it can really help you determine what tags to use, what keywords to use. So well worth looking into. And then you can select these things. If I think this is actually grayed out, but if you wanted to, you can apply. Oh yeah, it's allowing us to do it. You can tell it what language it's in, and you can tell it the category. So that's worthwhile doing as well, because anything basically to help YouTube understand what your video is about is well worth the while taking the time to do. So definitely do that. So we click on next now. And what we can do here is add an end screen. I won't go into what that means at the moment, but well worth doing if particularly for organic content. You can add cards that pop up in your left-hand screen, left-hand side potentially. You can add them here as well, which is definitely worth doing, particularly for organic content and for paid content as well, I believe. So, and what I'm going to do is obviously, depending on what you want, you've got private. You can decide whether your video is going to be private, unlisted or public. Now, just to give you an overview of what these mean, private means that only you, being logged in as you, will be able to view the video. So you have to be logged in as you in order to view that video. No one else in the world will be able to see that video. Unlisted means that it won't be listed if a person types in the name of your video into YouTube, it's not going to come up in the normal search engine listings. But what you'll be able to do is actually select the link itself and share that with your friends, and they will be able to still view the video even though the general public can't see it. So that's definitely worthwhile knowing about. So public means that it's viewable to anyone in the world, so they have the potential of searching for a certain term and your video will pop up. So that's what public means. Typically, if you're not wanting to make everyone aware of your video yet, I would use unlisted. I would tend to steer away from using private because literally no one else other than you will be able to see it. So it just depends what you want to do. But unlisted is basically private, but you can still have the option of sharing it with a mate if you want to. So typically I'd put unlisted. And then you can see down the bottom it said it's finished processing. So you can even schedule when it's gonna appear as a public video. So I'm gonna leave it as unlisted for now, but you might want to just select public. And I'm gonna click save. And that's done. So it's allowing us to copy a link here or even sort of share it directly into these social media platforms. So that's worthwhile knowing about. I'm not going to copy that at the moment, but that's useful to have that feature there. So we're going to close out of that now. And what you can see here is that there's no thumbnail currently attached to the video. So you can see that I've got a variety of different thumbnails in on my own YouTube channel here that I've created. You do really want to create a thumbnail because it's the first first impression of what the video is going to be, and really without a thumbnail people probably won't click on your video. So you want to get good at creating thumbnails, because in many ways it's more important than the content you're filming itself, because the thumbnail is critical really to really attract people to click and to commit to watching your video. So definitely worthwhile investing in learning how to create a thumbnail. And the good news is I'm going to be covering that in the next video, so I will see you there. Bye for now. Welcome to the final video in this course. In this video we're going to be looking at how to create your video thumbnail for use on places like YouTube and Facebook. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, when uploading to YouTube especially, a video thumbnail is critical really, because it's the first thing that people will see of your video, and really it's going to help them make a decision as to whether your video is worth clicking on. Now, that being said, if you're doing paid advertising, then it's not essential necessarily to have a good video thumbnail, because obviously YouTube will throw your video ad up at various stages in people's watching of YouTube, and thumbnail isn't really that critical. But if you're creating organic YouTube content, then I would highly advise it. And to be honest, it's good practice really in terms of maintaining the image of your channel and growing your YouTube presence. So even with paid advertising, I would recommend creating a good video thumbnail as well. So let's dive in and take a look at how to do that. And by the way, this is going to be completely free of charge. You're not going to need to purchase any additional software for this. I personally like using Photoshop Elements to create my video thumbnails, but I'm going to be showing you how to create them on canva.com, which allows you to create a completely free account and be able to create the thumbnail and download it. So let's dive in. Good, so we've uploaded our video ad, but as you can see there's no thumbnail attached and actually no image at all. Usually it brings up an image from the video itself, but for some reason it hasn't here. So now we're going to open up a new tab. We're now going to go to canva.com. And I've created a completely free account. I haven't paid any additional money or anything like that. And this is a great tool for producing sort of quick and easy items really that will help enhance your brand. So you can see I've actually made a thumbnail, pre-done a thumbnail here. So a bit like Blue Peter, I've prepared one earlier. And so we're going to be reproducing this and I'll show you how to do that basically. So if we go to home again, and then if we hit the templates button, well actually what the easiest thing to do is type in thumbnail, and we'll go for YouTube thumbnail. And then we've got a variety of templates that we can use, so you can scroll around and just sort of look at and see really what one you like the most. So there's a really good selection here of various templates to use, so definitely just take a browse around and sort of pick the one that basically suits you to a T. So we're going to select this one. It pulls open the template, and it's really quite simple. All we need to do is obviously we just delete this happy man eating the pizza, delete this white square, we delete that image, and that's given us a basis to work with. And then what we need to do is obviously upload a photo or two. So I'm going to navigate to photos, and then actually if we go to uploads, I think it is, and then I've already uploaded this image, but I'm going to show you how to do it from scratch, I guess. So we click the upload button, then we go to device, and then we navigate to where our photo is that we want to use. So if we go into this folder, I think I put it in. Yep, there we are. So on a Mac, by the way, if you want to preview an image, you can hit the space bar and it brings it up, it pops it up really quickly. So I've decided to use this image. It's a great photo of Dan looking really relaxed and happy in his ideal day, I guess, living his ideal day out. So we'll go with that one. Good, and it's uploading it here. Give it a second or two. There we go. It's uploaded it. So I'm just going to drag it in. Then I'm going to expand it out. And you obviously might need to play with the sizing. But then what you can do is position it backwards. So let's do that. So if I right click and send backward, it then has positioned it well. So we just need to get it lined up to where we want it to be. I think that looks okay. And then we can basically call this whatever we want. So let's call it live. Well, you probably want to call it the title of your ad, but for the purpose of this, I'm just going to make up a title: Live Your Best Life Now. And that looks good, but I'm gonna obviously play around with the look of it a bit. So I'm going to increase the size of the word now, just to really make it pop out. So we're going to select it, and then we're going to go to 144, I think, and then we're going to hit Command. Get that right. We're going to hit Command U and underline now, and we will probably delete that. I don't think we're going to need extra words, but what we want to do is include Dan's Scrap the 9 to 5 logo in the graphic. So obviously I've uploaded it, so obviously I won't go through the upload process again because I've just shown you. So we just drag that, or we just click on it actually, and it appears. So we resize it using these arrows in the corner. So you just get the dot and drag it up to where you want it to be. And it's a good idea not to make graphics too large, because it sort of can cheapen the look of the image overall. So say for instance we did that, it doesn't, it might slightly cheapen the look of it. When graphics are on the smaller size, it tends to make them look a bit more professional. So I think we'll go with that. Now Dan likes, as part of his branding colour scheme, which he's sort of decided in Brand Incubator, he uses the colour red, and there's a particular version of that colour that he uses. But for the purposes of this, I will just look at changing the colour generally. So if we click on we've clicked on this bit, which obviously you can drag around as well, and then we click the colour, and then we can choose any colours here, or we can even select a new colour. So let's go for a bit more of a red look. I think that's roughly the colour scheme that Dan uses. Obviously decide on your own colour scheme for your branding. It's good to be consistent with things like colours and things like that, to really sort of solidify your brand. It's a bit like if you're sort of out and about and you sort of catch a glimpse of the Sainsbury's logo, if you live in the UK, then you sort of instantly know it's Sainsbury's, and that's because they're consistent with their colour scheme, they're consistent with their font usage, etc, etc. So be consistent with the use of your fonts and things. In actual fact, this isn't a font that Dan would use, typically speaking, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to stick with that. But you can obviously change the font here using this menu, so well worth taking a look at the different fonts available. Okay, so overall I'm happy with that, and we're going to now save that. So first of all, I'm going to click download, and then you can use a PNG. It's saying suggested there. Typically JPEG is fine as well, and we don't have access to changing the size of it, because we need to pay for premium sort of rate for that. Typically I would have that as 1980 1080 by 1080, but this is going to have to do, and it will be fine for what we need it for, so that's fine. So we hit download, so I'm preparing your design, and it's downloaded it for us. So we can click on that and show in Finder. And then obviously what we want to do is copy that over to our project file, which organisation when you're video editing and doing any sort of creative work is really key, to be honest. Otherwise you're just going to lose stuff all the time. So make sure that's all organised properly. So I've already created a thumbs and artwork folder, a thumbnail folder basically. So I'm going to go Command V, and there we go. We are ready to use that. So it's worth noting that when you're creating a thumbnail, the time of the video, the length of the video will appear in the right hand bottom corner of the image. So whatever you've got in this portion of the image will be covered up by the time usually. So worth keeping anything that's key outside of sort of the bottom right hand corner, because it will get covered up by the time, the length of the video. So happy with that though. So now what we're going to do is head back over to YouTube, and we are going to go to edit our video, and you can see it's just sort of produced this horrendous sort of thumbnail, yeah, basically you just wouldn't want to use that, would you? Because I mean, whilst Dan, you know, Dan is not, he's looking like he's in pain or something, isn't he? So you just wouldn't want to use that ideally. So it really is a good idea to create your own thumbnail. So we're going to click upload thumbnail here, and then we will make sure this is the right one. Live your best life now. Yeah. Open. And that's as simple as that, really. So we obviously, the actual title of the video is "Are You Feeling Trapped in Your 9 to 5?" You can, I mean, it's not a bad idea to have whatever the title is on your thumbnail, but at the same time it's fine to have something different if you want to. So I think that's perfectly fine, having Live Your Best Life Now and having the title as that. So all we need to do now is click save, and it saved it. So if we go back to our channel videos, we can now see that the thumbnail should be loaded. If we just give it a second, there we go. So it's loaded our thumbnail. And as I say, thumbnails are really critical for really drawing people in to watch your ad. And you can see here that the time is indeed covering up the bottom right hand side of the thumbnail. So definitely keep anything sort of important out of the way of that. Okay guys, well that concludes this course in creating your very first video ad for use on places like YouTube and Facebook advertising platforms. I hope this course has been helpful. If you do have any questions, please do drop a question into the Scrap the 9 to 5 community, and I'm sure that your message will be communicated to myself in due course, and I look forward to helping you out with any questions you might have. Thanks ever so much for watching, really appreciate it guys, and all the best in your advertising campaigns. Bye for now.